All right. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know we're also on X and Rumble as well. And welcome back, guys. We have a big, interesting show tonight. Tonight's theme is the big question. And that's what we're going to ask with all of these stories. So I do have a special guest. I'm going to get things started with them. So first and foremost, I do want to go ahead and show you that thumbnail so you can see what we are discussing tonight. So it's some crazy things happening in the world of news, ladies and gents. And yeah, tonight we are discussing, if you haven't heard about it, you're going to hear about it tonight. Tucker Carlson is now officially a target. He has been named. I'm going to get into all of that. You'll see there's him. And of course, there's Donald Trump smiling right behind him because this is all a part of what Donald Trump put in motion. I warned you guys that they weren't just going to go after people on the left. And so here we are. We're also going to discuss Donald Trump is in China with President Xi Jinping. And it is very revealing, folks, that Donald Trump has no power over Xi Jinping. And Xi Jinping is the one that is holding all the cards. We're going to get into that visit and what is transpiring. What kind of deals they're trying to make. But it is very clear that China is very powerful. And I've never seen Donald Trump behave this way around any other world leader, the way that he is behaving around Xi Jinping. So you know who's running the boat here. And it is not Donald Trump. The other story that is breaking and is pretty big. It has officially been announced. We're going to get into those poll results, who the top contenders are for president for 2028 on both sides. And that is AOC and Marco Rubio. Shockingly enough, I told you just a couple days ago, I would not be surprised if Marco Rubio does not end up being in the top on that list. He is now the number one contender for the GOP, and she's the number one contender for the Democratic Party. We'll get into those numbers and what that all means and who's going to have a more difficult time. We're also going to discuss Thomas Massie is being heavily smeared. There's an attack out against him. He has a congressional re-election race this week. I think early voting is already starting. There's a smear attack against him, as well as Dr. Abdul, who is running for Congress in Michigan. Both of them are being heavily smeared, and I'm going to show you why. The numbers are moving in their favor. So we're going to discuss all that. And last but not least, our special guest is RFK Jr.'s former advisor, and he has some things to talk to us about. What happened to make America healthy again? And that is Theo Wilson. So do me a solid if you haven't had a chance to do so, and go ahead and smash that like button for me, ladies and gents. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. We're going to go ahead and bring in our special guest. His name is Theo Wilson. He is a former advisor to RFK Jr. And the big question of the night is, what happened to RFK Jr. and what happened to make America healthy again? Let's go ahead and bring him in. Theo, how are you? Welcome back.
How you doing, Miss Sabby? Great to be back.
I'm doing great. So you reached out. I think you may have seen the video that I uploaded about RFK Jr. and his connection to Palantir. And you reached out and you said there's some things you want to say. So the floor is yours. You know, what happened to make America healthy again?
Let me tell you something, Sabby. Having been there from the beginning, I think that there's a lot that's getting lost in translation, because what happened with Bobby is that when he joins up with Trump, and I said this, you're not going to be able to get the stink of Trump off of you. The sooner you get closer to him, the harder it is going to be for you to get away from him. And if you bend the knee You will never stop bending the knee. And so what happens is that he can't help it. He gets swept up into the orbit of those who are around Trump. And I remember during the campaign, one of the main issues that kind of made Bobby vulnerable to this kind of co-opting and corrupting, honestly, had to have been the fact that the DNC didn't give him any security. He was paying through the nose for that Gavin DeBecker security, man. I mean, I'm talking about, and he's a Kennedy, but that still is quite a heavy toll. So I just want you to know that that was one of the major concerns. And what you find is that it makes him vulnerable to the kind of compromise that we see right now. And when he actually joined up with Donald Trump, I remember saying to him that you have basically sculpted with this movement Thor's hammer, but only the worthy can wield it, right? And what I mean by that is that all the email lists, all the contacts, all the goodwill that was created with the independent campaign with Maha at the center, or the kind of health of medical freedom at the center. But if you give that away, then you're literally throwing this into whatever meat grinder that Trump is going to create for these folks. And that is a deeply dishonest man. And now I hate to be proven right about it, but the financial vulnerability that was created by the fact that he didn't get security, and the fact that it bled him dry, and the fact that he knocked on these doors that didn't open and finally joined up with Trump, doomed the Maha movement. And it's sad to see it happen.
So let me just tell people, those who may not have been paying attention at that point in time, when RFK Jr. was running, originally he was running in the Democratic Party, and he was running as a challenge to Joe Biden. There were multiple people that were trying to challenge Joe Biden at that time, and the DNC did not want to have a primary. So, there's a number of things that happened, but one of the things was that he was not allowed to have the security that all the presidential candidates get.
Right.
So Biden, for whatever reason, wouldn't give him that.
Yeah.
From what I understand, the other candidates did have, I know when I met with Dr. Cornel West, he had security. I know other people had security, but they wouldn't give it to RFK.
Right.
So you feel that is what kind of may have pushed him in the Trump direction.
Right. And see, you got to understand the gravity of not giving the son of Robert Kennedy Sr. security, right? You got to understand the history. And of course, we do understand that history of the Kennedys being vulnerable to assassination. That's one of the first things that I thought about when I was asked to join the campaign was how are we going to keep this guy alive? First and foremost, how are we going to keep him alive? He's saying things that are upsetting the apple cart. You have to remember the fact that when he began, he's absolutely right. He tried to start as a Democrat. That's the party of his family. And the fact that he was closed out from the left, I mean that within the campaign, the left stopped being rewarded for their advice. And so I should have known something was crazy when Dennis Kucinich left. But when I first got involved, Dennis Kucinich took me under his wing because there was a coalition between the left and the right. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Because since he was an independent, the coalition with the left and the right meant that he would kind of have this crossfire of advisors that would kind of help him out do what he needed to do. And so,
Theo, I think your picture has turned sideways for some reason. I think can you hear me? Uh-oh, we lost Theo. Oh, let me tell him. He'll come back. He'll come back. While we wait on Theo, it's true, like what he was saying. So RFK Jr. in the beginning, he was running as a Democrat, and then they would not allow him to debate him. Marianne Williamson, Cenk Uygur was running at that point in time, and Dean, I forget Dean's last name, but Dean Phillips, I think was his name. They were all trying to run against Joe Biden because they didn't believe that Joe Biden was, well enough and strong enough to serve a second term. That was one of the reasons, but also, of course, it was time for Biden to go. So RFK Jr. basically ended up running as an independent after that. But go ahead, Theo.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. So listen, from that place and time, I remember the fact that a number of issues began to arise But one of the most important ones was, of course, Israel. One of the most important things that ended up coming up on the campaign trail, literally October 7th was the day that he announced independence, right? And of course, he had got in trouble a little bit before that because he had said some things that were kind of tone deaf in regards to the lives of the Palestinians. My deepest fears came true. As soon as that happened, I saw the fact that, he jumped immediately onto Israel's side. And I can't necessarily blame somebody for being pro-Israel on October 8th, especially if you were already leaning that way. But by the time we saw what Netanyahu was doing, he had the opportunity. He had the opportunity. And what ended up going on was that we're making calls, people stop donating because they understand the tone deafness of it. All of this leads to the financial vulnerability of what ended up making him a part and parcel of Trump's regime. And so if you fast forward to the day that he joined up, I think that a lot of people now in America see Maha as MAGA. They see Maha as MAGA, and it's not. Maha, at least it wasn't. Let me be clear about that. Maha began as perhaps, I would say, the largest, perhaps I would think, independent movement that this country has seen in a generation. Bobby Kennedy's presidency was the biggest independent campaign since Ross Perot. And everybody in the campaign knew where to find him. Find Donald Trump. Everybody knew that if they wanted to join MAGA, they knew where to go. That's not what these people were. When you look at the medical freedom movement, which is where Maha comes from, these are some of the best folks in America. They've been violated. They've been let down. They've been exposed to all manner of medical malpractice. The reason why I joined up is because at the time I was a Democrat and Bobby Kennedy was the only one talking about the history of Black folks being violated by the medical system during the time of the pandemic and our vaccine hesitancy being rooted in historically traumatic events that happened to us, right? And so the Maha contingent still needs their needs met. And unfortunately, his alignments with the people that he's with now will not allow that to happen. He hasn't closed any of the loopholes in the medical system that allowed the opioids to come in, that allowed the compromise that we see with the vaccine companies. He hasn't made anybody's life any safer. One of the most problematic things that happened in the administration recently was that Trump allowed glyphosates back in. This was back in February 26th of this year. You have a situation where now he's got one of Palantir's guys integrating Palantir software into the department that he's in charge of. Now, during the campaign, he was talking about how we need to attack these big businesses and make sure that we bring them to account to the American people. But the very fact that we have Palantir integrated software into our medical records means that we are absolutely vulnerable in the most private ways to the kind of data collection and harvesting and predatory practices that are in the Palantir system. And so when you look at the fact that the Maha people, the people who began the medical freedom movement, did so out of last resort. These folks had nowhere to go but to turn to each other, found a champion in Bobby. And now Bobby has done this to them. I am sorry. I am sorry for those folks. I'm sorry that they had to go through that. And I feel like nobody's at the wheel right now in the administration. Nobody is an adult in the room. But we ought to understand how we got here.
Yes, Skylar, Palantir is in it. Yes. This is something that I was trying to explain to people, that RFK Jr. and his son, they are now connected to Palantir.
Yeah.
So it's just, a lot of people in this administration, they are looking out for themselves. They're furthering their goal. They're trying to make money for themselves on the side, or for their kids, or for whoever. So and RFK is a part of that. But the point to take away from here is that you're saying that Maha existed prior to him joining with Donald Trump.
The roots of Maha are definitely in the medical freedom movement, 100%. I think that the first person to coin the term Maha was a guy named Del Bigtree. He runs a platform called the High Wire. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that Del Bigtree was the one who actually put that out there first, especially when it looked like they were joining up together. So, and this was, if it predated it, it's only slightly, but the Maha's roots are in medical freedom. Maha's roots are in the people who were fighting to just take the pollution out of our environment. A lot of these guys are environmentalists. Remember, Bobby did a lot of work as an environmentalist a long time before he ran for president. In fact, he was beloved for that. And so he ran the Children's Health Defense Fund, right? And the Children's Health Defense Fund, I was on the email list. And, that was people who were out there really doing the best that they could to hold Big Pharma to account, to put their feet to the fire. And, when we look at the vaccine mandate era, when we look at the pandemic era, we're looking at the place where the Democrats began to move the authoritarian needle forward in a way that's easy to forget in the Trump era. But during the lockdowns, they are the ones who moved the authoritarian needle forward, betraying all of their principles. This is a very topsy-turvy time, if you do remember, Sabby, because as somebody who worked for organizers in the community, people who believe in labor rights, forcing somebody to choose jab or your job is anti-labor, right? Making somebody show a vaccine card, right? We got HIPAA laws for that. We got OSHA laws for that, right? And these were the Democrats. These policies that I'm referring to came from the left. So for those of us who stuck to those principles, it seemed like the Democrats left us. And the coalition that was formed around that, the roots of that are the Children's Health Defense Fund. And that became the medical freedom movement. And that is the people who coalesced to find a champion in RFK Jr. And these people's needs are still unmet. These folks are still suffering.
Now, RFK Jr. said before the presidential election, he said that he reached out to both sides. He said he reached out to Kamala Harris's team and he reached out to Donald Trump's team. So let's say, I guess Kamala Harris's team was not interested in having that conversation, but let's say things went differently and they decided they were interested in having that conversation. What do you think would have come from that? Do you think like the glyphosate issue, like, do you think that would have been different? Do you think that he would have still aligned with Palantir?
You know what? I don't think so, because Palantir, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, that's a coalition of guys, right? They've all been right-wing ideology supporters. They've all kind of had an anti-democratic thing about them. He probably might have been compromised in another way. But the thing is, Bobby shouldn't have went either way. The captain goes down with the ship, Sabby. The captain goes down with the ship. If you, and just imagine that, right? You on a submarine or something and you know who you at war with, and then your captain be like, we joining him now. You're like, no, right? When you are the leader of a movement like this, and he had expanded so much further from where he began. By the time that he was joining up with Donald Trump, the infrastructure that he was in charge of could have been a force to be reckoned with. And he wouldn't have been a running joke in this country. He wouldn't have been a running joke in this country. That's the tough part. The tough part about all of this is seeing this guy who I know personally, who I thought I grew to know, shall I say, becoming basically like a stand-in for everything gross and backwards and disgusting. He's the butt of so many jokes, right? And that's kind of the price that he pays when you join up with a circus. You should have gone down with the ship. I don't think he should have been knocking on either door. I certainly advised him not to do that. Regardless of how the campaign ended, you go out on your shield. The people in the medical freedom movement that became the Maha movement deserve at least that.
You know, what's interesting. I remember him making that announcement that he was, taking himself off of the ballot, and that not to vote for him in certain states or something like that. But come election day, people still voted. He still got a number of votes. But I do remember some people were very upset when he decided, to your point, not to go down with the ship. I do remember that.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, you got a situation here where the Trump administration is doing something very interesting. They're contributing ultimately to the looting of America. America's being looted by these crony capitalists. He's joined the crony capitalists, the very ones that he said that he stood so far against. And I got a real baptismal lesson in power in that campaign. Power. The ability to compel one to bend the knee. Because Bobby wasn't trying to bend no knee, right? And I'll never be mad at myself for seeing an anti-establishment hero in Bobby Kennedy in 2021. I'll never be mad at myself over that. Because we were in a situation that the world was turned upside down during COVID, right? In the same way that I was trying to say to the people who were the left, the same misgivings I have about racism in policing institutions, I also have in medical institutions. They actually kill more of us than the police. And Bobby having an open ear for that, right? Bobby reaching out to certain members of the Black community and being like, listen, if you're hesitant about these, I see you. The only Democrat, as we were at the time, to speak out about the Tuskegee experiment. The only one that would say, listen, man, there's a book called Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington that he ended up making a documentary about called Medical Racism, which that book was referenced for. I'll never be mad at myself for following that guy. But I think that the people in the Maha movement are sitting there spinning right now. For example, and I'm gonna give you an example of this. Bobby was supposed to be the center of the independent, so you know how you have the DNC and the RNC. There was an INC right there in Denver, Colorado. And it was like throwing a birthday party that the birthday boy didn't show up to. It was like that. And there were people from all across the spectrum, from the people who were trying to do alternative healing methodologies, from the people doing ranked choice voting. They were all there trying to make a point to coalesce this movement. And this movement was self-decapitating. And there's one guy trying to keep it alive right now. His name is Christopher Life. Shout out to brother Christopher Life. You know what I mean? But I remember being at that convention, and me and the only member from the left who was left, my buddy Johnny Hiller, are just talking about what are we going to do next? You know what I mean? Like, how are we going to move this forward? So I would suggest Christopher Life get on here. He's got a really good strategy, actually, to use the independent side of the political equation to actually make Congress leverage towards the people. But we left that not knowing what to do, because the very same duopoly that he said that he stood against, he joined. And until we have an adult in the room and somebody at the wheel of these giant institutions that are being gutted right now by crony capitalists, there's a lot of people out there who really needed help, who joined RFK's movement, who were gonna fall flat. And I see them, I wish them the best, and I wish that this didn't happen.
It's something about Donald Trump having a hold on people. You know, I think the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard, people who had pretty strong convictions about certain issues. And once they became a part of the Trump administration, it's like who are you?
Who are you? Where did the person go? It's like it's a body snatching. It's a selling of the soul. You know what I mean? Like, I accidentally went to a Trump rally. I'm going to tell you how I think this happens. Fear is a hell of a drug, Sabs. Fear is a hell of a drug. And fear can make people bend their logic in a way that if you're not accustomed to facing and overcoming fear, then people can be warped and distorted in crazy ways. I ended up at this rally, and I was like, oh, this is a little bit too rare for my blood right now, because you could feel that kind of like mob mentality thing going on. MAGA is kept in check by the fear of the violence from the base. And there's a culture of fear that keeps everybody in check regardless of what they originally believed. And that is the kind of thing that allows folks to bend the knee and forget that we have record of them on video saying the exact opposite thing that they're saying right now. You know what I mean? So power, Sabby. Like Trump, I hate to say this, but you got to hand it to him in his understanding of power. And that's something that we have to reckon with before we believe in another person. Like, we got to know how they'll fare under that kind of pressure, because there's a lot of people disappointed at the INC.
I will say, before October 7th, before RFK's Israel views were known, for those who weren't paying attention, RFK was probably the best chance as an independent.
Yes.
He had a massive, I covered his announcement because he announced here in Boston So I
Right.
covered his announcement on the ground. And I'm just telling you guys, they had to have like 3 overflow rooms. It was like a big deal, like obviously because he's a Kennedy,
Right.
etc.
Right.
But I'm just telling you guys, like, he probably was the best chance as an independent, again, before October 7th, because after October 7th, that was when people started to hear his views on Israel and Gaza, and that changed a lot. So
Sabby, let me tell you, they stopped donating. They stopped donating. That's one of the first things that this is what I'm saying. I hate being right about these things, right? Bro, just say ceasefire. That's all you gotta say. Just say ceasefire, right? Because what was happening at the time was nobody wanted a rematch of 2020. Nobody wanted to see Trump and Biden go at it again. And I say to folks all the time, listen, Trump wasn't 1980 Ronald Reagan, and Biden wasn't '08 Barack Obama. These were not superstars. These were duds in the water. These guys didn't have a lick of charisma between them, except for outside of, his cult. But Bobby had a real chance there. And one of the things that really shocked me was his lack of political self-defense protective instincts, the kind that you see in a Barack Obama, where he's so smooth, he kind of intuitively knows how to work the crowd and knows when you're setting a trap, knows what to say, when to say it, and when not to say something. Bobby was missing that whole bit of hardware, Sabby. And so many times we were trying to advise him on the campaign, what Captain Obvious would say, do not step on this bear trap, Bobby. Bobby stepped on the bear trap. Now we have to figure out how to explain that. And literally, for example, I said, Bobby, so I was brought in to figure out how to get an independent candidate the black vote. I said, what's the black community talking about right now? The R word. So how are we going to actually change that? Well, I changed it to targeted community repair. I wrote a framework by which you can actually sell reparations to the entire American populace. And it's very easy. Once you lift up the actual base of the people by targeting the communities that have been struck by redlining, you actually already take care of the black community, run these social programs there first, that's B1, and then expand them out to the barrio, you see what I'm saying? And if you lift from the bottom, you actually can lift all. But if you want the black vote, you got to say it. I booked him on Breakfast Club. Bear trap. My homeboy booked him on Earn Your Leisure. Bear trap. That lack of self-protective instinct was just something that politically did him in and made him vulnerable. Had he not got abandoned by the people who supported Palestine in that moment, he would have had the money to tell Trump where to go and how to get there.
He would have been the best. I'm telling you guys, at that, especially at that time, he was really the best shot as an independent. And things could have been, who knows? Things could have been very different. But that's not the case. What do you think? Have you heard from him, Theo, since he joined with the administration?
The last time I talked to him was the day that Elon Musk threw up that Sig Heil. That's the last time I talked to him. And let me tell you about that. I talked to him. I was like, Bobby, did you see Elon throw the Sig Heil? He was in denial about it. He said that wasn't a Sig Heil. That was him throwing his heart out to the audience. I said, he lost. He lost. We lost him, y'all.
Wow.
We lost him. And I what is so painful about this is that America still needs an independent movement. America still needs a third party. America still needs a way to break the duopoly. That was the closest we got. And in a matter of minutes, in a way of bad political calculus, he decided that being in charge of HHS was more important than actually creating a movement that reformed the whole system together. That was the closest thing we had. He was the imperfect spear to throw in the gears of the duopoly. But when the champion is wrong, the cause will fail.
It was supposed to be like a blend of left and right over like these core issues. Yeah, that would have been a different, because I think he was heavily smeared by the media, of course.
Right.
But for those who, I don't know how old I was when Ross Perot ran, but I was a kid.
We were little, yeah.
Yeah, we were little. So this was probably the best chance in my lifetime.
Absolutely. Had he been able to, had Bobby been able to sustain his initial momentum, because you got to keep in mind, these guys were unpopular, Trump and Biden, and we were at the point where he was getting sometimes a double digit, sometimes like up to 21% support. Like it was like it got up to the 20s. That's game changing territory. That's game changing territory. That was the time to do it. And I feel like there's a multiverse of RFK Juniors. There's a multiverse of RFK Juniors, right? There's one universe where he did the right things and said the right things and got himself into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. There's a version of him where he didn't win, but he at least went down with the ship. And then there's this version of him, where I've seen, I mean, gosh, the absolute, and you know, just on some man stuff, like don't kneel to another man like that, brother. Not like that, and not that kind of man. Not that kind of man. Not that unprincipled, unscrupulous kind of man. You know what I mean? There's some people out there that deserve that kind of honor and respect. Trump is not one of those men. And I thought in my mind that he was. There's a part of Bobby that's very Marcus Aurelius, philosopher king. Like if you get to talking with him and you know he can talk, you know, he can expound on ideas and pontificate like the lawyer that he is in ways amazing recall, right? But that's not the multiverse that we're in. He chose us into this universe where he's the running butt of jokes about people who have bad habits and are nasty. That's literally what he is. He's the guy with bad habits and is nasty. And I hate that for him. I hate that for him. Do you think that
This is from Megan, yeah.
Hey, how you doing, Miss Megan? Yes, he knows. The man ain't stupid. That's what I'm saying. He's not dumb. He's not dumb. He's been cowed into the public humiliation ritual that you have to enjoy or at least tolerate if you're in Trump world. He's been cowed into this. Whatever chess game he thinks he's playing, he doesn't realize that the only one he played was himself. But no, that's not correct. He played Maha. These people out there, and I'm talking about, I just want to talk about Maha people for a second. Because there's a lot of, you know, now that he's joined them, they got the stain of Trump and his weirdness on him.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. People think it's like a Trump thing.
Right. And it's, look, I remember at the Independence National Convention, a lot of Maha was there, man. These folks, a lot of them was from the left, right? Because some of the people who were vaccine hesitant were left-leaning granola types. You know what I'm saying? Left-leaning naturopathic yoga types, right? These folks have, you know, really fallen through the cracks in terms of getting help for their children. These folks have fallen through the cracks when it comes to like the kind of poisoning that can happen, these iatrogenic diseases that can go on. You get sick from going to the doctor. You see what I'm saying? These people banded together. They're so open-hearted. A lot of them are literally just like, this is, yo, Sabby, this was super sad. They was clinging to Bobby like, yo, this is all we have. Maha people are not, or at least were not, what this association with Trump has been. There's a lot of people who used to be Democrats who got injured by the jab and couldn't talk to nobody else, right? Who got injured by the vaccine, got rejected from their families, their communities, who were Democrats, who wasn't trying to hear it, who were tribalized. My homeboy used to call them the branch Covidians. Shout out to Montague Conley. He used to call them the branch Covidians. The people who were like, Anthony Fauci is God. Those folks, he called them the branch Covidians, right? So then, you know, they've been ostracized from their family by the people who are only believing the Democrat narrative, and they joined Maha, right? And now, where are they? Their data is literally in the hands of Peter Thiel.
Right. That's the scary part, the Palantir part, which I was warning people about for quite some time. I mean, That's another one. There's another one here for you, Theo, from Measured Man. Forgive me, Sabby. Is Theo in Colorado and author? I feel like I met him and read his book. And if so, his book was so powerful to me.
Yes, I. Well, thank you for alley-ooping that little selfless plug, brother. Yes, I do have a book. It's called The Law of Action, and it's on Amazon right now. Yes, yes, that is my book. The book is called The Law of Action. It is about the other side of the law of attraction that they didn't talk about, the action portion of attraction. So yeah, that's what that's about. Thanks for the alley-oop, bro. Yes, sir. Um, but yeah, the Palantir piece, the surveillance capitalism piece, the crony capitalist piece. I remember making content about Bobby being against the crony capitalists.
Yeah.
But right now, when I tell you Sabby, there ain't no adult in the room. Like for real. Like there's nobody driving this bus, yo. There's nobody driving this bus.
They're all surrounded by the big money now.
Right. Right. And I don't know what it is about human nature, but it's happened to so many people that it makes you wonder what trigger they hit. Was it fear? Was it greed? Was it compromise? Right? Did somebody from a foreign government have, you know what I'm saying, tapes on somebody doing something? I don't know what it is. But the facts are this surveillance apparatus is completely private. They have it to themselves. They can target it with AI. They can find you. They can find whatever health conditions you've ever had. I mean, and these are the people who believed in Bobby the most. You know, I'm healthy. I'm not worried about what they find out about me. But them people from Maha who was harmed by the establishment that Bobby swore to fight, now putting their information in the hands of somebody like Peter Thiel.
More surveillance.
I can imagine the level of betrayal they must feel. I can imagine. That's insane. That's insane. You know, and I feel like the only thing that can stop this bus is the people in some kind of populist way that is outside of any mechanism that can be controlled. I don't know what that looks like. I hope it ain't too ugly, but I'm just looking at the wheels and noticing the lack of brakes. And I'm noticing who took them brakes off. And I'm noticing that if you don't got no brakes, the crash out is coming. That's what I'm noticing.
I hear you there, Theo. Well, Theo, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And hopefully we can talk again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, Ms. Sabby.
All righty. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Theo Wilson, again, former advisor to RFK Jr. there. Again, Theo has done great work for not just when he was a part of that campaign, but Theo does a lot of great work. So you can also find him on TikTok. You can also find him on African Diaspora Network as well. So yeah, guys. Yeah. Okay. I thought it was important for people to hear that. I know some people have been asking that question. What happened to Maha? Oh, there you go. There you go. You know, people kind of got cozy into the Trump administration and the big money is all around them, and people kind of changed the way of doing things. So, yeah. All right, ladies and gents, we still have quite a bit to get into. Let's go to some of the comments here and then we'll get to the next story. Are you guys responding to the poll? Please answer that poll question when you get a chance. There's a reason why I chose the people that I chose in that poll. It wasn't really my choice. You'll see why. Those are the top contenders right now, according to the poll. And I can only do 4 choices. So it didn't, that's why I don't have none of the above. But I know that's, I see a lot of people said nobody. Thank you, Roger, for the super chat. That Tulsi story was something else. Yeah, I don't know what is going on with the CIA office and Tulsi Gabbard's office, but there's some crazy stuff going on around there. Did they take the files? Did they not take the files? Thank you for this one, Roger. Nice hair, Sab, but isn't Theo Measured Man? No. Theo. Thank you, Aja. People from the ruling class will almost always chase power over helping the people. That's a good point. Really good point. And Marmy, how do we bring an independent party to the table? I am ready to take up an independent POV. I say look at it like this. I think Roger Meadows had a really good point about this a long time ago when Roger said, like, you know, parties are still parties, whether they're third party or Democratic Party or Republican Party. And when you have a party, the needs of the parties always come first, right? Before the candidate need, before like your need or whatever. That's just how it operates. So you don't necessarily have to have an independent party, but I think we really need to get some independence out there. I think we need more independence in Congress. I think we need more independence to run for president. The problem with the independent run for president is that it really needs to be someone that has name recognition. That's why some people were so excited, like when they found out there was a Kennedy that was running and he was going to switch over to independent, that type of thing. But I think that for president, it needs to be someone with big name recognition. But that's what I'm saying. I think we really do need to get more independence in Congress and people who are truly independent. I do believe that Osborne from Nebraska is running again as an independent. He came really close to winning last time. So we'll see. We'll see. Yep. So answer that poll question for me if you can, guys. I know some of you are like, I don't want any of those people. It's not about who you want. It's about who do you think would win. If those were the contenders, who do you think would actually win? Tonight's theme is the big question. And let's move on to our next story because we have a big question about this one. Donald Trump and team, they are in China, in Beijing, meeting with Xi Jinping. And what I have noticed so far from this trip is that Xi Jinping is holding not just all the cards, but he seems to have this sort of power over Donald Trump. I have never seen Donald Trump cower to a leader in this way, shape, or form as he did during this visit. So let's get started with this one here. This is Xi Jinping when he's shaking hands. A lot of people are making fun of this one because it's when he shakes Stephen Miller's hand. Xi Jinping looks so happy. He always has like the smile on his face, it seems like, and he just seems like such a happy person. But watch the look on Stephen Miller's face. That's Stephen Miller right there. He just looks so unhappy. And look, look at he's still staring at him after he's not even shaking his hand anymore. That's the funny part. But yeah, Xi Jinping, very happy person there, very happy leader. And that takes me to this meeting here that they had. Brian is sharing this one. He said, Trump is in China kissing major ass right now. So I want you to hear what Donald Trump said about Xi Jinping. Like, and he was, the ass was kissing. There was a lot of that going on. Listen. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Just make sure I'm sharing the right. Let me come out of here for a second. I have to make sure I turn on the sound. Here. Share. I always forget I have to do this. I'm sorry. I'm without Eric tonight, guys, so apologize. All right. There we go. Here. Yeah. There we go.
Well, President Xi, I want to thank you very much. First of all, that was an honor like few have ever seen before. And I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing and they represent so much. And I know they represent so much to you. You and I
He's really talking about these children, huh? Like he's really kissing hard.
have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had. And that's, to me, an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me. And whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say.
Guys, can he kiss his ass enough? Can he kiss enough? You're a great leader. You're a great leader. People don't like me saying it, but I'm going to say it. You're a great leader. And I just can't say that enough. I have never seen him like this with anybody else.
Say the truth. And I just want to say on behalf of all of the great delegation that we have the greatest businessmen, the biggest, and I guess the best in the world. We have amazing people, and they're all with me. Every single one of them, we asked the top 30 in the world, every single one of them said yes. And I didn't want the second or the third in the company. I wanted only the top. And they're here today to pay respects to you and to China. And they look forward to trade and doing business. And it's going to be totally reciprocal on our behalf. So I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever. They can never remember anything like it. I can say in the United States, people aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. Thank you very much. Thank you.
He kissed his butt pretty hard, didn't he? Kiss the bricks ring. So Donald Trump knows, he knows China is very powerful. He knows what's going on here. So he realizes that he can't treat China or Xi Jinping the way that he was treating like Maduro. He knows he can't. And there's things that he needs from Xi Jinping as well. Right. So, yeah, he brought a bunch of these big time tech bros and CEOs with him, because they also need something from China. You'll see more about that in just a second. But I wanted you to see just how he was kissing up to him. And then what was really interesting about this trip so far is that there is to be no discussion of Taiwan. That is one of the things that is going around, that Xi Jinping did not want to get into that. So Donald Trump is confronted about that here. And you'll notice that he doesn't respond when a reporter does ask about Taiwan.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
特朗普总统说谈得很好。Did you talk about Taiwan, Mr. President?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, did you talk about Taiwan?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Okay.
Yeah, so no discussion about that. And that's another thing that's been going around. Xi Jinping, I guess, made that very clear. Do not come over here talking to me about Taiwan. Because for those who are not aware, I guess Taiwan, has been wanting some type of independence. We've talked about this before a couple years ago. And there is this one China clause, meaning that Taiwan is a part of China. It's all one China. And the US government has decided to back Taiwan, right? So it can cause a whole bunch of other things. It would be another war that we do not need to be involved in. And so he basically told them, we are not talking about that. So that's why Donald Trump didn't respond when the reporters are asking about Taiwan. They went on to have this sort of luncheon here. And I got to tell you, we get embarrassed so much sometimes. When you go to other countries, then you start to understand why people think Americans are not smart. Donald Trump made this statement, and it's making its way around the internet during this luncheon. And I was like, I can't believe he said this. Listen to this.
母校清华大学。
As allies in World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt's mentions of the brave people of China, that's what they were, drew loud cheers in his speeches in the United States, and everybody loved what he had to say, just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans, Chinese restaurants. in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
那么，作为二战期间的盟国，罗斯福总统在美国的多次演讲当中提到了勇敢的中国人。
And they're translating, of course. He actually said, just as Chinese now learn to love basketball and jeans. I can't even believe he said that.
人民，正如当前许多中国人非常喜欢篮球和穿蓝色的牛仔裤，在美国目前的中餐厅的数量要比美国前5大快餐连锁店的总的店面还要多。
And there's the translation there. So that's how the trip is going so far, ladies and gentlemen. Just more embarrassment on our end. But another thing I noticed too, and shout out to the person who pointed this out, John Michael, Trump, who does not drink because his older brother died of a drinking problem, takes a sip and toasts President Xi Jinping in a sign of respect. Watch this. Donald Trump does not drink alcohol, but he's in Xi's home now. Watch this. That's how you know who has the upper hand. Xi Jinping has the upper hand. I've never seen him do that. So that's a big no-no for him. Mouse said, damn, she is not playing. No. And we're going to get into more of that because I'm just trying to show you what's unfolding here so far. Now, Donald Trump did have time for a sit down with Sean Hannity. Some of the commentators from Fox News also went to Beijing. So I want you to hear what he says because they do bring up Iran. And there have been discussions between Xi Jinping and Trump about Iran. Listen to this.
The issue, and you've been asked about it, and you've spoken about it, and that is China's support of Iran. How big a discussion was that today?
We discussed it. I mean, when you say support, they're not fighting a war with us or anything.
No. How big a discussion was that today?
We discussed it. I mean, when you say support, they're not fighting a war with us or anything.
No.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, you know, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that.
So first part has not shown any type of change. So China saying that they're not going to give any weapons to Iran, that's not a new development. They stated that before, right? But this part here, he said, well, they said they'd like to still, you know, keep getting their oil. Yeah, because China gets oil in the Strait of Hormuz as well. So I want you to think about the way that Donald Trump is saying it and what it actually really means. What Xi Jinping is actually basically saying to Donald Trump is that we're getting oil from the Strait of Hormuz just fine. And we're going to continue that relationship. Now, Trump is not going to relay it that way to Sean Hannity. He wants to make it seem like he's the tough guy. He's the powerful one, right? So he's not going to say it that way to Sean Hannity. So his thing is, oh, you know, they said they'd like to still, you know, keep getting their oil, you know. That's it. You know how it is. Yeah.
Like to see Hormuz Strait opened. I said, well, we didn't stop it. They did it, and then we stopped them. You know, sort of interesting. He joked. He said, you know, it's sort of, they stopped it, then you stopped them. But they'd like to see it opened. But they actually closed it. He didn't like the fact that they're charging tolls. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know who would pay them. I mean, where do they put the money? The country's decimated. You know, they're charging tolls. Where's the money?
Donald Trump is such a bullshitter. Like, listen to the way he goes. He said, but they actually closed it. Listen to this.
To see Hormuz Strait opened. I said, well, we didn't stop it. They did it, then we stopped them. You know, sort of interesting. He joked. He said, you know, it's sort of, they stopped it, then you stopped them. But they'd like to see it opened. But they actually closed it.
Guys, I'm dying over here. Are we serious? So just for anyone who may not been paying attention to all this. The Strait of Hormuz is open, but you got to pay to go through. It is not open to the Gulf states that were attacking Iran and are still trying to, get through without paying a toll. It's not open to, of course, the United States. Like, you're killing people in their country. You blew up their infrastructure. But the strait is open, and China's going through and they're getting oil just fine.
He didn't like the fact that they're charging tolls. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know who would pay them. I mean, where do they put the money? The country's decimated. They're charging tolls. Where's the money going?
The issue.
So, of course, that's a lie, right? Iran is not decimated, right? So that is a big part of the conversation. Marco Rubio was also questioned about this visit as well.
He did, and it was important because the Chinese side said they are not in favor of militarizing the Straits of Hormuz, and they're not in favor of a tolling system, and that's our position. He did, and it was important because the Chinese side said they are not in favor of militarizing the Straits of Hormuz, and they're not in favor of a tolling system, and that's our position. He did, and it was
so they may not be in favor of the tolling system, but the reason why the toll is now in place is because of you guys, Marco. The ships were moving just fine until you and Israel decided to strike Iran. So they're trying to make it seem as though, oh yeah, everything's, just hunky-dory with China. But to show you guys what it's really all about, here's Donald Trump right here saying, like, well, I brought all these businessmen and they're happy because they're going to make a lot of money.
So I'm in China. We had the greatest CEOs in the whole world. We had about 30 of them, and they were pitching President Xi on doing business in China. I think they were successful.
So there you go. That's what this is really about, guys. Right? So he brought all those CEOs with him. Elon Musk was there. All those CEOs that he brought with them so they can all make money because they want to do business with China. If you look at the top banks in the world, China has the most in the top 5 right now. It's not even close. It wasn't always that way. They know what's happening. They know where that shift of power lies, right? So China has grown like enormously, and their economy continues to boom. And I just never saw Donald Trump that way with someone. Now, Trita here brings up a really important point. This is Trita Parsi. Important. Just before Trump met with Xi, Iranian news services reported that Chinese ships had begun transiting the Strait of Hormuz. This was under the Iranian mechanism. While Beijing rejects a toll, it has been open to paying an administrative fee for the environmental upkeep of the strait, which is just another way to frame the toll. This agreement neutralizes American pressure on China to side with the U.S. to open the strait, since the waterway is open to China. In fact, it reverses the pressure. If the U.S. stops these ships from transiting as part of the American blockade, Trump will be picking a losing fight with Xi while in Beijing. So this is another thing. Trita brings up a really good point here. When Xi Jinping says that he wants that strait open, that's, again, his way of putting pressure on Donald Trump. Now, he's not saying, I want it open, so you need to go fight Iran. He's basically saying, like, you need to open it. You need to remove the American blockade. Right? And if Donald Trump wants to get what he wants from China, which is trade, if he plans on to getting that, he's going to have to bend the knee here a little bit. It's not going to be the other way around. China has openly rejected the sanctions. China has openly said, like, yeah, you put sanctions on us, we're just not going to pay it. They know that they hold the cards. So the seat of power has changed. Xi Jinping right now can look at Donald Trump and say, I'm the captain now. And I want to point out something else that Rick Sanchez said, because I thought this was actually really interesting. It shows you that shift in power. Listen to this.
China's saying, look, from now on, sanctions, you could sanction whatever the hell you want. We're not going to pay attention to them. And we're going to continue our tariffs with you, including the 77% on American beef, 22% on soybeans, which has American farmers actually really pissed off. So the Chinese are saying, yeah, if you come to us and you ask nicely, we'll consider lowering those tariffs. Oh my God, how the worm has turned. And then, of course, there's the Thucydides trap. I didn't even know what this was, but you need to know about it because everybody's talking about it, and Mr. Xi's the one who brought it up. So Thucydides was a Greek warrior turned philosopher who essentially the theory that is used when describing U.S.-China relations or U.S.-Sino relations is about this Thucydides trap. And the Thucydides trap is essentially that when one power gets really, really large, it is able to overtake the other power, and then it's difficult to avoid war between those two opposing forces. And that's the fear. That's why Mr. Xi has just said in his opening remarks, no less, he expressing hope that the U.S. and China will be able to avoid whether the two countries can transcend the Thucydides trap and forge a new model for relations between these two powers. So he said this, referring to the Thucydides trap, that, in other words, let's avoid the expectation of war between us simply because we've grown big and you have always been big.
Xi Jinping has a nice way of putting things, right? Like, he's not saying you better do da-da-da, but he says, like, to Donald Trump, let's avoid this happening.
Now the two of us are big. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to clash. But then she went even further, and this is where it gets interesting. It's being called a threat. You tell me if you think this is a threat. He said, the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. Then he says, if it is handled properly, looking at my notes, if it is handled properly, this bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, and here's where he gets, for Chinese palaver, this is strong. He says the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting this entire relationship in jeopardy. So he's warning Trump. He's saying, if you fuck with us when it comes to Taiwan, this shit can get really serious. Pardon me for cursing, but I mean, sometimes it's just the best way of expressing what the man is actually saying. And that's what he's saying to Trump.
And I believe that he means it. They want the United States to stay out of this Taiwan situation at all costs. And based on what I've seen, we cannot beat China militarily. But what's the big question, right? The big question is, there are three big powers now, right? It's the US, Russia, and China. The big question is, how long is it before the United States tries to go to war with China? And they'll use whatever reason they want. I mean, they made up a reason for Iran for years. They'll make up another reason for Cuba. They made up a reason for Iraq. Like, they'll make up a reason to go to war. But how long do you think it is before the U.S. goes to war with China? There's been a lot of talk about Israel. We've been talking about Israel for gosh knows how long. But there's something I want you to pay attention to as we go into 2028. I know it seems far away, but it's not as far as you think. Pay attention to the way these politicians talk about China. Any of these politicians that are itching to go to war with China is not somebody you need to vote for. That would be a world war, and we would lose. Now, they're not going to tell you that, but that's the reality. How long do you think it'll be? Something to think about. All right, ladies and gents, we're going to move on to the next story. We're going to move on to the next story. I guess you guys can tell when Eric's not with me, huh? Because He's so much smoother with this than me. He's smoother with the technical than me. So I'm sorry. It's fraud lawsuit time. Yeah, it's that time. Okay. All right, ladies and gents, if you haven't had a chance to do so, do me a solid and smash the like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to the next story, ladies and gents, and then we'll go to the super chats. The new presidential poll, brace yourself for this one, has identified the top contenders for the GOP and the DNC. And I'm just going to show you first, and then I'm actually going to get into that poll. This poll is the Atlas poll. Now, the Atlas poll was actually pretty solid. The Atlas poll predicted that Donald Trump was going to win in 2024, predicted that Biden was going to win in 2020, predicted that Trump was going to win in 2016. The Atlas poll was actually pretty solid. It is early, but these are the top contenders right now. AOC and Marco Rubio are leading in the latest 2028 presidential primary poll. Did you hear what I said? It's AOC and Marco Rubio, not AOC and JD Vance. Now, I'm going to read just a little bit of this, and we're going to go through the data. Who will be the next president of the United States? Well, a new poll may shed some light on who will be running in 2028 or may be running. AOC has surged to the top of the latest 2028 Democratic primary presidential poll, the first time the progressive has led the field. Again, this is the Atlas poll. I'll show you the actual poll in just a second. On the Republican side, Marco Rubio leads the field of potential candidates. Remember when I told you just a couple of nights ago when we were talking about this possibility of a Trump third term, and I told you don't sleep on Marco Rubio? So that was before I saw this poll. And now we're seeing, now it's early. And Nico House had a really good point. He said Marco tends to start out okay, but then he starts talking and he starts to decrease in the polls. But because he ran before as well. But I'm warning people about this one. Because here's the thing. Bring this down here. We'll go to the next one. Here's the data, folks. Look at the numbers. For the Democratic Party, the 2028 presidential primaries, AOC is at the top. She gained 10 points. After AOC is Pete Buttigieg. Then Gavin, I still don't understand how Gavin Newsom is as high as he is. I really don't. It baffles me. Gavin Newsom is third. Kamala Harris is fourth. Bashir is fifth. Andy Bashir. Cory Booker is sixth. Josh Shapiro, the Zionist. These all are Zionists here. Josh Shapiro is last. For the Republican Party, for the primary, Marco Rubio is in the lead. JD Vance is second and Ron DeSantis is third. Look at the difference between Marco Rubio and JD Vance. Marco Rubio is at 45%. JD Vance is at 30%. Now, I just want to caution you about something really quick before we get to the raw data. Remember, when you see these polls, it can do something to you mentally because it can make you say, okay, this is who I have to choose from. But that's the trick. The media is going to do this too. They're going to show you these polls and you think to yourself, this is who I have to choose from. But that's not who you have to choose from. Right now, it's 2026. Not 2028 yet, but they're already putting it in your minds. These are going to be your options. So remember what I told you a while ago. You have to pick the person that you want instead of letting polls and corporate media tell you who that person should be. I'll give you an example. For those of us that supported Bernie 2016 and 2020, the media never told us that Bernie Sanders was the person we should have chosen. They smeared him every chance that they got. Sometimes they wouldn't even mention Bernie's name when they were, especially in 2016. Right? So they try to do these things so that, they're trying like, oh, don't think about that. The person's going to be awful. It's going to be horrible. Don't even go down that road. No. The reason why they couldn't ignore Bernie is because he got so much energy and he was so popular, they had to say his name. Right? But it could have easily gone the other way where he didn't have that energy and popularity, and you probably would have never known who Bernie Sanders was. Media blackouts are going to happen to some of these people, the ones they don't want you to know about. But again, I am telling you, this is how they get you. They show you a list of people, and we don't even know that all of these people are running. AOC is probably going to run. If she doesn't run for president, she's probably going to run for the Senate. But we don't even know if all these people are running. JD Vance is probably going to run, but they're already putting it in your head. Now let's look at the raw data. So this is Atlas Intel, right? Election scenarios, Republican and Democrat comparisons. And I want to show you the first one here. If the midterm elections for the House of Representatives were today, who would you be most likely to vote for? So 54.6% said the Democratic candidate. 40.1% said the Republican candidate. It's not even close. And this is pretty much what I think a lot of us predicted would happen, that Democrats would take back the House, maybe the Senate, but most likely at least the House. It's not even close. And if that is the type of energy that is going into 2028, I think for the presidential election, it's going to be closer than this. And this is the warning I want to give to everybody now, because sometimes I see people they see these numbers, they get excited and they get happy or whatever. And you just have to remember, it's data for right now. Things always change as you get closer to the election, right? Remember one time it showed like that Kamala and Trump were close in the polls. And then as you got closer and closer to the election, that was not the case. So just keep that in mind, because I think some people will see this and they'll say, oh, the Democrats got this. I can just stay at home. Oh, they got this. I don't have to do anything. And those numbers change. Now, when we get to the presidential piece here, should be page 54. Here are those numbers for you. So AOC is at the top of the pack for the Democrat primary with 26%. Top of the pack. Poor Raphael Warnock. He all the way at the bottom. But again, I think we know why. Zionists, right? I am going to say this about Pete Buttigieg with this 22.4%. In 2020, I remember that Pete Buttigieg, that his support was exaggerated. And I'm telling everybody now, I remember all of this. Just like he got out there and said that he won Iowa and then come to find out that wasn't the case. The so-called energy and support for Pete Buttigieg in 2020 was exaggerated. So just be aware. Just be aware of that. So I don't think that Pete Buttigieg is actually polling as high as this. I think there's some astroturfing going on. I really do. So that's what you're looking at for the Democrat primary election. For the Republican primary election, again, it's not even close between Marco Rubio and JD Vance. Marco Rubio's at 45.4% and JD Vance is at 29.6%. Donald Trump Jr. is at the bottom. It's not even close. Now, this is a problem because Erica Kirk and essentially Turning Point USA, they have already endorsed JD Vance publicly. And it's not looking so good for JD Vance. And I want to show you why, because you have to remember, every time that Donald Trump slides down in approval rating, JD Vance approval also slides down. Here we are now.
Vice President Vance, how's he doing? How popular?
Yeah, J.D. Vance is not doing too hot to trot at this point. Look at this. Okay, J.D. Vance's net popularity, it should actually be a plus. There we go. Plus 3 points. Then we go to minus 18 points at this point. That is a 21-point swing in the wrong direction. J.D. Vance started off his vice presidency in plus territory, and now he is in negative territory. Down he goes. J.D. Vance getting dragged down along with the president of the United States.
Where does he rank? Maybe along with, maybe because of that. We don't know that. But where does he rank among other vice presidents?
Yeah, you look at other vice presidents. Look at this. At this point in their vice presidency, historically the worst at this point in a vice presidency. Kamala Harris was at minus 13. Mike Pence was at minus 7. Joe Biden was at plus 4. Dick Cheney was at plus 37. This might be part of a longer trend of vice presidents becoming unpopular, but we can say J.D. Vance is historically the least popular vice president at this point in their vice presidency.
Yeah. This is the unfortunate part about being vice president if you plan to run for president at some point. If the president approval rating is doing great, then your approval rating is going to be great. But if the president's approval rating is decreasing and Trump's continues to do so, then your approval rating is going to decrease along with them. So people keep saying, we're saying that JD Vance is the front runner. That is not the way it's looking right now. Let me give you a tidbit here on Marco Rubio, and then I'm going to tell you the issue with AOC. Marco Rubio, I think the reason why he's leading the pack is what I warned you about a couple of days ago. He's in the Trump administration, but he can distance himself from Donald Trump in a way that JD Vance cannot. JD Vance is the vice president. He's Donald Trump's right-hand man. Everybody knows who he's right there, right next to him, right? So it's kind of hard to distance yourself from the president when you're the vice president at that point in time. But it can be done, but it's going to be difficult to do so. People are more likely to know who JD Vance is. 2, Marco Rubio has that sort of degree of separation. Yes, he's with Donald Trump. He's with him there in Beijing. But it was kind of brought to my attention. A lot of people still don't even know who the Secretary of State is. Like the average Joe that is not paying attention to politics on the regular, like the rest of us, they don't even know who that is. And so this has been a wake-up call to me. You know, sometimes I have to get outside of my own bubble and I have to talk to people who are not in this like all the time. And sometimes just talking to some of my friends, like they don't know who all these people are in the administration because they're not paying attention to it like that. So that's a plus that he has going for him. The fact that a lot of people don't even know who the Secretary of State is. So there's that. All right. But Marco Rubio is a neocon, and he's a hardcore neocon. Marco Rubio has supported and backed every war in my lifetime. If Marco Rubio became president, the Cuba thing, if it doesn't happen under Trump, it would definitely happen under Marco Rubio. He's a war hawk. He's a neocon. He's like a softer spoken Lindsey Graham. And I think some people don't realize that because Marco Rubio is not as, I guess, crass as Lindsey Graham is. But Marco Rubio has similar temperament where he has that type of mindset. Oh, let's just blow them all up. I don't care. And the scary thing about him is he says it in such a calm way. So he supported all he's a neocon. That's going to be the really, really dangerous thing about Marco Rubio. He's also pro-censorship. He's one of the people that supported going after people who were not pro-Israel. So everybody keep that in mind. Everybody keep that in mind. So don't be fooled by, you know, his calm demeanor. Marco Rubio is a hardcore neocon. Here's the problem AOC is going to have. Same problem Bernie Sanders had. The DNC superdelegates. Does everybody remember the DNC fraud lawsuit? DNC to the court. We are a private corporation with no obligation to follow our rules. just a quick reminder here, rather than reflecting on consternation, everyday voters are having over the conduct of the Democratic presidential primary, the DNC is doubling down on their assertion that the primary election belongs to the people who control the party. This was the back and forth between Debbie Wasserman Schultz at the time, who was the head of the DNC. And this is what was argued. Everybody pay attention to this because I interviewed the lawyers about this, which I'll show you in just a second. Here we go. Despite their party rules, where did I go? Oh, here we go. DNC attorneys assert that the party has every right to favor one candidate over another, despite their party rules that state otherwise, because after all, they are a private corporation and they can change their rules if they want. So for those who are not aware of this, long story short, in 2016, during the convention, which is where the superdelegates will say which candidate won which state, it was very obvious to people who have the Bernie supporters who have been following this through the thick and through. The DNC wanted Hillary Clinton to be the nominee. So what they did, they took some of the states from Bernie Sanders that Bernie won, and they gave those states to Hillary Clinton. Is this real life thing? This really happened. And it was public. So like Bernie Sanders, for example, won every county in West Virginia, and they gave it to Hillary Clinton. You see, the problem that AOC or anybody else in that position is going to run into is that, yes, voters vote for them in the primary, but unfortunately, the Democratic Party has super delegates. And at the end of the day, the super delegates decide who the nominee is going to be. Marco Rubio doesn't have to worry about that in the Republican Party because they don't do it that way. They don't have super delegates. Does everybody hear what I'm saying? Now, some of you remember this, but this is what the problem that AOC is going to run into. Regardless if everybody comes out and votes for her or not, if the super delegates who basically back what the donors want, if the donor class does not want AOC, the super delegates are not going to pick her as the nominee, regardless of how many states she wins. This is the troubling part here about the Democratic Party. And I see a lot of people online right now, and they're like, yeah, we want AOC. We're going to get her in there and she's going to win. We don't get her to be the nominee. The super delegates get her to be the nominee. And I saw this happen, like we saw this happen right in front of us in 2016. So if you're new to this and you're wondering, how could that happen? Okay. These are the lawyers. I interviewed them 3 years ago. These are the Becks. Let me pull this up here so you can see. This is Jared and Elizabeth Beck. These are the lawyers that were part of the DNC fraud lawsuit. They were the ones that represented the Bernie supporters and said, hey, you can't do this. So I just want to show you part of this here, what they said.
We had already had that lawsuit on file, and our aim was not to reverse the results or, all these Trump lawsuits try to do, but we were trying to get the money back for the people that had contacted us because we saw this as a huge monetary fraud to the tune of $220 million that went to the Bernie Sanders campaign and then into the Democratic Party ecosystem. That was just, we had homeless people who were our clients, okay, that were reaching into their pockets. That's how awful this thing was, okay? And in retrospect, it was a very traumatic experience, I think, for a lot of people. It certainly, changed our lives. I hope some lessons were learned from it, and I hope
don't donate.
Right, but I hope
So I wanted you to hear this because I feel like a lot of commentators, they don't want to mention this. Like they'll get on camera and they'll tell you to donate to these politicians. They'll say donate to her. We got to get this person in there, but they totally forget to mention this part, which is the super delegates at the end of the day are the ones who decide who the nominee is going to be. Hell, we just went through a presidential election of 2024 where they actually selected the nominee without a fucking primary. And for whatever reason, people still believe that this is going to be fair. Now, Bruce Steva was the attorney for the DNC at that point in time. And I want to show you what Bruce Steva actually said in court. I think Bruce has another job now. And the Becks, because I showed this to the Becks as well, I think this was their final interview because they went through so much with this. You guys don't understand. Like their goal was just to give people their money back. All the people who made those small dollar donations, their goal was to get those people to get their money back. And this is what DNC attorney at the time, Bruce Steva, this is what he explained.
This came from DNC attorney Bruce Steva. He said there's no such thing as a Democrat. The DNC just encourages people to vote for the Democratic Party. No one has any right to an expectation of a fair election. If the DNC wishes to select a candidate in the primaries instead of a free election process, that is their right. Donating money to Bernie Sanders doesn't mean you thought that money was going to assist him to win the primary. You have no right to think the DNC was obligated to follow their own charter and internal policies about elections. And then this last piece here, discussion of and any disputes with the DNC do not belong in a transparent process in a court of law. The DNC is a private association which should never be asked to engage in the discovery process or have to reveal any of its internal workings or strategies should they decide to select a candidate rather than allow a fair election of a candidate. And
so this is the part that a lot of commentators are not telling their viewers about. And for those of us who remember 2016, we all know about this. The DNC, it's a corporation. And because it's a corporation, they can run it the way that they want to. That's why they were able to say, but we decided we wanted the candidate to be Hillary Clinton, so we don't care if you voted for Bernie Sanders. That's why they can do that. So when people say that we have true democracy, this is why I push back and I say, no, we don't. Not when you have parties that are corporations, not when you can vote for someone and they can say, yeah, but no, that's not who we want, so we going with this person anyway. No, we don't have true democracy. Not when they can kick people off the ballot just because. So that's the challenge that the Democrat candidates are going to face. So knowing what I just told you about how the superdelegates back who the donor class wants, that right there lets you know that whoever they allow to be the nominee is backed by the donor class. And that's why Bernie couldn't get it, because he wasn't backed by the donor class. So what's the big question? The big question comes up with, well, what do we do? What do we do about it? This is why, and I've been pushing for this for I feel like forever, but it hasn't been forever. This is why I keep saying we have to circumvent that system. This is why I say when people say, oh, well, just vote Republican or just vote Democrat or just vote, you're going to have to get around this some way, shape, or form. I really do believe at some point we will have an independent president in this country. I believe at some point is the system, it's going to break itself. I think it's eventually going to happen. But I think people need to understand that when the donor class says that this person is the person, that means that that politician is going to do the bidding of the donor class, even if they didn't take corporate money. Again, people don't want to tell their viewers this. And then what happens is these people win, and then the audience members get, let down, and they start to feel, they're like, oh God, why are they doing this? Why are they doing what they said they were going to do? Because the whole system is bought and it's corrupt. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you'll understand why things work exactly the way that the elites wanted to. That's why I continue to say it's us versus them. So the way that we break this is by building dual power. You build dual power, you build systems outside of this electoral system, outside of this corrupt system that we have. A lot of the things that we keep complaining about and striving for, some of these things we can do ourselves. And while all this time has gone by and people are sitting back and they're like, oh God, I just can't, I hope who's next becomes president. And they're just sitting back waiting for the next presidential election. During all this time, you could be doing mutual aid, starting worker cooperatives, housing co-ops, things that are going to protect you and help you right where you are in your neighborhood, in your town, in your state. So we will be having the next mutual aid workshop on May 30th, Saturday, May 30th, 11 a.m. Save the date. And I'll send out the invite via my newsletter. It'll be virtual as usual, because I'm trying to tell you guys, I see it all now. I saw on social media today, people were like, oh, this is good. I hope Marco Rubio can just continue to distance from Trump as much as possible. People sitting around looking at him to be the hero. People on the other side of the internet sitting back waiting for AOC to be the hero. Meanwhile, it's like, what are you doing all this time? So we got to look towards each other. AOC not going to save you. Marco Rubio not going to save you. The only person that's going to save you is you and your community. And it took a while for me to really understand that and really grasp that. And I think the sooner more people start to understand that, the better off we'll be as a society. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Thank you for the super chat, the Kashba. I would not vote for any of your suggested candidates. Yeah, so those were the top candidates in the poll. That's why they're listed there. Measured Man says Trump thinks he holds the cards, and he might, but China makes the cards. Having the girls greet him, I feel, was shade. Thank you, Kenman. Trump is dim sum. Thank you for this one. Marco Rubio hair dye by Just for Men. You think he dyes his hair? Thank you, China. Sab, we need a deep dive in your workout routine, please. Maybe I can do that as like a virtual workshop. Thank you, Wiss. War of Iran is not going well. Trump being humbled by China. U.S. economy is going into depression. We're seeing the decline of U.S. imperialism. And you know what's going to help you with that? Mutual aid. Thank you, Liney. Sabby, what the heck happened to the Alaskan pipeline? I do not know. Someone text me about that. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but that's a good question. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Jung. Murtaza Hussain reported on Cisco's disturbing relationship. Cisco's disturbing relationship with Israeli security state. Please discuss. I'll have to look into that. I feel like every time I turn around, another company has a relationship with Israel. Every time I turn around, I find out it's another one. Shout out to Trash Panda, who's been a member for 8 months. Xi Jinping equals Winnie the Pooh. He does kind of look like Winnie the Pooh. Thank you, Echo Pup. China, the country that actually invests in its people and country in public transit and infrastructure, unlike America, who funds Israel and war. Thank you for this one, Echo Pup. I'm not voting for AOCIA or any of them. Thank you, Marlon. Next puppet will be a tough choice for Israel. Thank you, Roger. No one knows Rubio because he represents FP. Voters vote on DP. Earth Beauty said, I remember it. What happened to Bernie is why I left politics and Democratic Party in 2016. Yeah, some of us remember. Thank you, Kawani. Can we ban the Electoral College? Are we a democracy? We should. I wish we could ban the Electoral College. I wish we could. Thank you for this one. Ew, another presidential race. I won't be voting in. I'm telling you, man. Thank you, Roger. Change begins in states. Run CBIAs to get your policies. Thanks, Roger. And thank you, One Upped. Worker co-ops should not be the goal. We need to start talking about building an international cooperative commonwealth. We can do all of that. We can do all of that. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to the next story here. Da-da-da-da. Okie dokie. They're coming after everybody. They're coming after everybody. Okay. I'm just making sure I got the banner right here. Okay. All right, guys. So again, the big question. You know, the smears are starting. The smears are starting. Thomas Massie is being heavily attacked. This is his early voting week. And Dr. Abdul, who is running in Michigan, is also being heavily smeared. Both of them, the same time, two different parties. Let's start with Thomas Massie. Right now, this is flipped. Just the other day, the betting odds for Tom Massie, they tanked because he has an accuser. We're going to get into that in just a second. So his betting odds tanked. However, on Thursday, it says things have turned around. Thomas Massie has regained the lead in Kentucky 04 Republican primary. He now has a 60% chance to win. I'll go ahead and show you this here. But again, these things only happen if people come out and vote. So just keep that in mind. But his betting odds have seriously reverse course, right? So that's good for Thomas Massie. What's not good for Thomas Massie is that he has an accuser. And there are people already debunking this. But this woman here is coming out against him. And she is saying that he abused her. We'll get into it. Listen to this.
My name is Cynthia West, and I believe it is important to speak up and hold those in power accountable. I will not be silenced. I will never back down, and I will never stop fighting for what is right. Yes, Thomas Massie and I had a personal relationship. That's not a secret, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But things dramatically changed. The relationship ended, and I experienced conduct that I believe was inappropriate, intimidating, and designed to silence me. Since speaking publicly, I faced political retaliation, personal attacks, and the coordinated efforts to discredit me. Frankly, that reaction says more about the culture of power and intimidation in politics than it does about me. Here's what I know. Transparency and accountability cannot only apply when it's politically convenient. The same people who demand the truth from everyone else cannot suddenly hide behind attacks and intimidation when the questions are directed at them. I am running for school board in Okaloosa County because I believe leadership should protect people, not pressure them into silence, whether that's in Congress or on the school board. The most important thing is transparency and accountability, and no amount of backlash is going to deter me from standing up for what I believe is right. Speaking out against powerful people, it's uncomfortable, it's difficult, but doing the right thing often is. My name is Cynthia West. I'm running for school board, and I will always stand up to bullies, and you can always count on me to tell the truth.
So it's interesting that it's coming out now, right? So it is election week for Thomas Massie. So I found this to be very interesting. Marjorie Taylor Greene responded to this, and she said there was no hush money offered to the jealous Miss Massie wannabe. Thomas Massie is just being dishonestly smeared because his primary is next week, and the foreign money billionaires are trying to buy Kentucky's 4th district. Younger voters get out the vote and beat the spoon-fed Fox News viewers. So that's coming from Marjorie Taylor Greene. She called her the Miss Massie wannabe, so it sounds like at some point there, yeah. But this is what the poll was showing just the other day. It showed that his betting odds dropped dramatically, and of course, that was after those videos started going around of Cynthia. So, like I said, it's just the timing is very interesting here. And guess who jumped on that bandwagon? Guess who? Benny Johnson.
Millions of dollars. Strange how that happens. Like Ilhan Omar, it's the same thing.
Wow, what a surprise. Another lie. Go figure. Who would have thunk it? Wealthy far before Congress, a career in business, owned a construction company with her family. Bro, you're such a liar.
Thomas Massie, also somebody who's calling for the release of sexual assault claims. Well, here it is. Here's his dream come true. Thomas Massie, who never votes with Republicans, who always votes against President Trump.
What a surprise. Another lie. Literally votes with Republicans 90% of the time. Brother, how do you have an audience? Literally, how? 96% conservative alignment score from Heritage Action. Brother.
Thomas Massie voted more with Democrats than he voted with Republicans this cycle.
Bro, all these votes are...
That is a blatant lie. Who watches Benny Johnson? Who watches this guy and believes what he says? Who believes this? Oh my God, my God, my God.
Available publicly. Would you like to prove that? I don't know what you're seeing, but this is what I'm seeing. The available 25 to 2026 roll call analysis. There it is. 77% with Republicans. What are you even talking about, bro?
He's up in a primary in the next week. It'll be really nice to see him lose. I want to see him lose.
I bet you do, bro. Did you ever maybe consider that perhaps that's why this salacious story of this one single unsubstantiated allegation is coming out, and now you're associating him with all these other unscrupulous characters? These people, Benny included, are going to sit there and act like this one unsubstantiated claim 6 days before a primary election, a hotly contended primary election, which a lot of money that supports a lot of foreign interests is very interested in unseating him from. And you're going to sit there and act like this is some big bombshell. Do you guys not remember, I don't know, Stormy Daniels, E. Jean Carroll, Brett Kavanaugh, the hearings around that? Do you not remember staunchly defending Donnie and Brett Kavanaugh in those exact same situations for things that were far worse? And now the hypocrisy, the blatant hypocrisy that you're going to do the exact opposite of that to Thomas Massie. You got no principles, bro, and everybody knows it.
But Thomas Massie, by every definition, is functionally a Democrat.
That's hilarious.
Whoa!
What definition is that, dude? Well,
I forgot he said that. So you see how they're jumping in on it to come after and smear Thomas Massie? Yeah. So they basically try to Me Too Thomas Massie here. And Anya Parampil, she was the first person I saw that she was talking about. Yeah, she's running for school board, but listen to this part. Her campaign reports a whopping $82,000 in funds for a school board run, tens of thousands more than comparable candidates. Her opponent reports $0. $65,000 of this came in the form of a loan from West herself. What do people think of this? In other words, she running a campaign, but she ain't really making any money for the campaign. So she donated most of it herself, according to the funds that Anya showed. So I think there's something to be said for that. Meanwhile, Thomas Massie is introducing legislation to make AIPAC a foreign agent. Listen to this.
Today, I introduced a bill called the AIPAC Act. You'll see this come up. Nobody knows this. I'm debuting it on your show right now, which would make AIPAC subject to Foreign Agent Registrations Act. For some reason, they're immune right now. And I think not just the money that's spent in politics, but the lobbying that happens on Capitol Hill should be reported if it's a foreign country, whether it's Great Britain, Australia, Turkey, Qatar, or Israel. It needs to be reported.
And the amount of money that goes to these influencers, it's really interesting. You'll see them sort of all, publishing the same attacks online almost simultaneously, or they'll release videos. They're all on the same page.
Yep.
And it's like they're receiving talking points. They should have to disclose that they're receiving this money, right?
They should, but a lot of times what they'll do is that they have these Slack groups. I don't know if everybody knows what Slack is, but Slack is another communications app. So kind of like, Discord, like WhatsApp, like that kind of thing. But in Slack, you can make these groups, right? So a lot of times these influencers, they'll all exist in one Slack group. And what they'll do is like, they'll say, okay, here's the message. Let's pass it around. And they will all tweet out the same message at the same time. And that's how they get to go viral. Right. So it's called a tweet storm. That's what we used to call it. But that's what he's working on right now. That's why they want him gone.
Yeah, when I do a commercial, and I've said this so many times, when my sleep, I think about it. I'm Thomas Massie, and I approve this message. I'm Thomas Massie, and I approve this message. That's either at the front or the end of every commercial I do. And when I send out a piece of mail, it says who did it, and my campaign, Thomas Massie for Congress, approved by Thomas Massie for Congress, paid by. And we need that. I believe we should have that same sort of truth in advertising on social media. Because if it's a good idea in the other outlets, it would be a good idea on social media, particularly because so much of it is foreign money. I remember all of these complaints about election interference, fraudulent elections, and the Russians being involved, and who else being involved. But really, the elections are being influenced online.
Yep. And if everybody was transparent about that, this wouldn't be an issue, right? They're smearing him. They're also coming after this guy. So again, very different sides of the political aisle here, but they don't want them there. And this is Dr. Abdul El Sayed. So he is running in the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate for Michigan. He is running against crazy ass Haley Stevens and also the whack job Mallory McMorrow. These women are horrible. Both of them are big time AIPAC recipients. Mallory J Street, she tried to hide it and say she wasn't. And then it came out that she did take the money. You know what I mean? It happens. But Dr. Abdul, no pro-Israel money. He is now in the lead. And I'm telling you guys, this is why they're coming after these people. So he is soared above these corrupt, greedy women. And, obviously the establishment sees this as a problem and they want him to be stopped. So he was behind in the polls. I've been watching this. He was behind and now he has jumped ahead. So it looks like he's going to win that primary in Michigan. So Dr. Abdul. So they are now trying to say that Dr. Abdul has lied about his credentials. Michigan Senate hopeful El Sayed calls himself a physician, but has little history treating patients. So this is what they do. This is what they do. Okay. So they are saying that Michigan Democrat Senate candidate Dr. Abdul has publicly said he's a physician, but there's overwhelming evidence that he's had no experience as a licensed medical doctor. So here we go. This April, he gave an interview to a local TV journalist where he talked up his credentials as a physician multiple times. In March, he told a group of Teamsters and nurses that he had been in enough codes to watch who really does the work, and said the same month on a podcast that I have been a doctor my whole career. His LinkedIn profile currently says he's a physician. He called himself a physician and epidemiologist. So But according to the review of Michigan and New York state medical records, he's never been granted a medical license in those states. So let's hear what he said about this, because he's explained this before. This is Dr. Abdul. This was his keynote speech at the University of Michigan Medical School graduation in 2019. Let's listen to part of this here.
I'm actually often asked if I'm even a real doctor. That's up for debate, I guess. When I ran for governor, an enterprising journalist wrote an article. El Sayed touts his doctor credentials, but he never practiced medicine. And it's true. I've never practiced medicine. That wasn't always the plan, though. After all, I don't think anyone plans to memorize thousands of PowerPoint slides, listen to hundreds of lectures at 3 times speed, or show up to pre-round at 5 a.m. because they don't intend to practice medicine. Like I'm sure many of you graduating here today, I always wanted to be a doctor. I love science, the exactitude of the thing, the fact that every question has an answer, even if you don't yet know it. The fact that through rigorous research, we can discover it. And I love.
Yes, Cheetah said, and this is a Democrat trying to discredit Dr. Abdul, two sides of the same coin. Yes. Yeah. It's happening to both of them. From like Thomas Massie is being attacked by Republicans and Dr. Abdul is being attacked by Democrats. So that's why I told you it don't matter. If they see that you're not going to be beneficial to the establishment, that includes Israel too, by the way, they don't want you in there. So, and I can explain this as well. It's like, just because someone, let's say if they haven't practiced yet, right? That doesn't mean they're not a doctor. Like, for example, there are people that go to law school and they receive a Juris Doctorate. They are trained to be a lawyer. You know, they have that JD. But sometimes people go to law school when they don't actually end up practicing law. You know what I mean? So these things happen. But the point is, he is a doctor. And in fact, I'm telling you, they're trying everything, any little thing. He said, that is doctor to you. Here's his credentials here. See, he shouldn't even have to do this. This is the shit I'm talking about. Doctor of medicine. Dr. Abdul. Yeah, exactly, Kenman. He chose not to do residency. Exactly. But that doesn't mean he's not misrepresenting himself. So the establishment is getting desperate. The elites are getting desperate. And this is what they do. They're going to come after with all types of stuff. I mean, I've been waiting for a while because I was like, okay, they're going to throw one of these curveballs pretty soon. Because I've been waiting and I watched this guy like steadily climb up. And we know the whole situation with Thomas Massie. And I was like, yeah, there's a smear coming soon, you know? And so this is their last ditch effort to try to stop them and take them down. And, you know, they really don't like Dr. Abdul because he's Arab. He's Arab American. They really don't like him. And these are Democrats doing this. So it happens on both sides, man. It happens on both sides. So we will see what happens throughout, again, these midterms. Thomas Massie, apparently there was an influencer on social media, on Twitter, and she is organizing people to go out there to Kentucky and help him win. She just put out the call on Twitter and she said, we got to stop the billionaires. We got to stop AIPAC. Please come to Kentucky and help Thomas Massie win. That's not, I mean, she's not, you know, a famous person. She's not another politician. Like, that was just a woman on social media, and she put out the call. I think she makes little like TikTok videos. She put the call out, and apparently a bunch of people are going. Like, I think James Lee is going. You guys know podcaster James Lee. James Lee is going there. I think Ryan, I forget his name, Ryan Atta. There were a number of people, creators, that responded and said they were on their way to Kentucky. So, I mean, it's like, this is what you got to do. And with Michigan, I mean, I know they've been organizing very heavily there, and people are, getting out to help Dr. Abdul, because he wasn't at the top of the polls in the beginning. He has been climbing up as time has gone by. So, a smear was going to come at some point, right? This is the new phase. This is the new politics. It's the politics that is anti-war. It's a politic that is anti-imperialism. Or if even by just the littlest margins, it's a politic that is not pro-Israel and doesn't support the U.S. giving money to Israel. And I think the message that we need to send to everybody, especially going into 2028, is that this is no longer your grandma and your great grandma's politic. Things are changing. And we have to stand firm on that. Okay. We have one more story, ladies and gents. One more story. Texas Real said, I called Massie's office 2 weeks ago asking how I can help. Yeah, I'll see if I can find the girls. I think I retweeted it. I'll have to look at my account to see if I can find the girl who put the tweet out, because she told people to come and help. And that's what the grassroots looks like. That's what it looks like. Okay, let's get to the final story here, guys. So a couple of days ago, I told you that Donald Trump was gutting free speech. This strategy that he started is the counterterrorism strategy. And they talked about what the target was going to be. In particular, they said they were going to target the left. They were going to go after the radical left voices. And it was very clear from the rhetoric that they were going to be targeting people that were anti-Israel and anti-war, which is not just the left. Now, Sebastian Gorka, who is a part of this counterterrorism strategy, has gone on record in this interview to make it very clear that Tucker Carlson is one of the targets. Now, some people watch this and they're like, well, they didn't actually say, no. You have to pay close attention to what Sebastian Gorka says here. And we're going to point it out to let you know that they are looking at Tucker too. Listen to this.
However, there are things within our laws that you are not allowed to say, right? The freedom of speech does not extend to inciting violence or threatening the lives of specific individuals. However, there are things within our laws that you are not allowed to say, right? The freedom of speech does not extend to inciting violence or threatening the lives of specific individuals. That is not permissible. Beyond that, we will map. We haven't talked much about it, but if you read the counterterrorism strategy, it's a very clear document. We don't shy away from telling the world what we're going to do. We are going to map out these individuals. We are going to identify them. We're going to find this is, God bless Scott Besson, Kash Patel, yes. AG, the acting AG, Todd Blanche. The money trail. The money trail is the most important thing. You look at these from the river to the sea, bring the Intifada to the streets of America. It's so interesting. You're on the campus of Berkeley or you're on the streets of New York, and everybody has exactly the same placard, printed with the same font. That's a little bit strange. So, I can't discuss, ongoing operations, but.
See how he's pointing out speech? So that would apply to the pro-Palestinian protesters. Let him continue here.
The importance of malign foreign actors who leverage domestic fellow travelers. We lived this for 40 years during the Cold War. We will get to the bottom of all of it, whether it's the Singham Network, whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, whether it's anybody else. Our mission is to uphold the Constitution and at the same time protect Americans from violence.
Now, this guy, I think I went to the wrong one. I'm sorry, guys. See, this is what happens when I don't have Eric with me. I'm so sorry, but I'll find it. Sebastian Gorka, this is from Brock, a disgusting Hungarian British foreign agent is pushing Project Esther, a Heritage Foundation plan to criminalize anti-Israel speech and prosecute critical Americans as domestic terrorists. It is part of the Hamas support network. There it is right there. Project Esther, a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism. So see, this is all part of it. And so let me get to the other part. Sorry about this, guys. Let me just go over here. I believe it was Ken Klippenstein who shared this here. Yeah, let me just go to it. I think there were two different ones. He's posting about him a lot. But he's been sharing a lot of like Sebastian things that he's been saying. Might have to come back to it. But I know I had the one. Let's see. If not, I can go to the article. But I thought I had counterterrorism and incited by the government. These are things that you're not allowed to say. Yeah, there's that one, but there was the one. Okay, it's before this one. I'm so sorry, guys. It's different when Eric's not here. Here it is. Got it. Okay, here we go.
I'm not sure that Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson are conservatives. If you are lauding...
Pause here. So what he's saying here is White House counterterrorism czar Sebastian Gorka. So he is questioned, right, about that counterterrorism strategy. And this is what he says about Tucker Carlson and Nick. Listen to this.
I'm not sure that Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson are conservatives. If you are lauding a Sharia law, I'm not sure that Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson are conservatives. If you are lauding a Sharia law, if you are saying that there are Muslim states that seem to be better qualitatively than America in terms of freedom and prosperity, I'm not sure that means you're part of the conservative movement. So if you remove those individuals and you understand that they're not conservatives, what's left? I'm not sure.
Let me break down what he's saying, guys. So remember in that counterterrorism strategy, it said that one of the things that was going to be, they were going to target like what they considered to be the radical left. Remember they said that, right? So when thinking about people like Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, he is now trying to say that they are not conservative. And that'll be his reasoning to be able to go after them. Does everybody get what I'm saying? Because the outline for that strategy, it breaks it down who they are looking to target and go after. It doesn't say anything about, going after people on the right or what they consider to be like radical right or whatever. It specifically says the left and da-da-da-da. So what he's telling you is if you're not pro-Israel and you say you're conservative, he does not consider you're not conservative anymore under the counterterrorism strategy. You getting my points? So Tucker Carlson is no longer conservative under the counterterrorism strategy because he is not pro-Israel and he has anti-Israel speech. And pay attention to this because this is going to be the thing that I think is really could probably get people out in the streets. Because Tucker Carlson is definitely still a conservative. He's not a leftist. He's not a progressive. But for the counterterrorism strategy purposes, he is letting you know you're not a conservative and you are fair game. He named them by name. Now, when we get to the Alex Jones part, because Alex Jones said he was trying to warn people that this was coming, you'll see what I mean. Tucker Carlson did respond to Sebastian Gorka. And I have to use this screenshot from Ken because Spectrum has paywall. Everything has paywall now. I don't understand. Spectator, sorry. And it says this here. Never one to recoil from an argument, Tucker Carlson has asked Gorka for an interview. Seb, I've been watching you talk about me on the internet, and I think it might be more productive to speak directly. Tucker wrote yesterday in a text message to Gorka, and this was seen by Cockburn. I'm happy to meet you anywhere for an interview, so please let me know. Thanks a lot, Tucker. So Tucker Carlson did reach out to Sebastian Gorka. Now let's fast forward to what Alex Jones said, because this is what I was trying to tell you. Didn't I tell you that they're not just going to use this to, go after people on the left, that they're going to go after people on the right too? And their way of doing that and defending that is that they're going to say that, well, no, you're not conservative anymore because you're anti-Israel. Listen to what Alex Jones said here.
I've been warning everyone that this was coming in the last few months, and now it's here. Sebastian Gorka, Trump's new head of counterterrorism, was interviewed by the editor-in-chief of Breitbart yesterday. And when asked, well, are there just left-wing terrorist groups on your new national counterterrorism directive you put out? And he said, well, yes, because you can't really count Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes as conservatives, essentially saying they're extremists or terrorists. And then the editor goes on to say, well, they should be investigated for working for foreign governments, meaning Qatar or Iran. Something that Tucker a few months ago was told by high-level sources that he is under criminal investigation. And then Laura Loomer came out and took credit for it and said that she was the one that fingered him. Who knows if that's true? She lies incessantly and is delusional. But what I do know is that it was declassified last year by the Trump administration. Starting in 2013, Obama put me under national security investigation by the Boston office and directed Comey to carry it out. And then I was under investigation even through the first Trump administration because they weren't aware of it. So the reason we knew this was coming is the same neocons that work with the Democrats to set up all the training for state police, local police, and the feds to take on right-wing extremists. Remember all that under Clinton and Obama are now basically back in charge. This has always been their goal. That's why they staged Oklahoma City. That's why they launched the Waco attack. They've always wanted to try to launch a domestic war and gun confiscation against the American people. And so
Alex has to learn how to just get straight to the point, but here we go.
The neocons are pretty much in control of most of the Trump administration now, other than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and people like Tulsi Gabbard. And so everything they tried before, they're not going to do again. And they blame Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and myself and others like Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, for being critical of the Iran war and other issues where Trump broke his promises. And they think the sliding poll numbers are because of us criticizing him, not Trump breaking his promises with his constituency. Because the average Trump supporter is not like a cult-like Democrat that'll sit there and be used and abused. So this is a really, really big issue. And I've already had Todd Blanche, when he was deputy AG, the Democrat lawyer, kill Ed Martin's investigation into the DOJ and CIA running the Sandy Hook show trials on me and financing it all illegally. I mean, we have him cut and dry. He's now the AG. This is all part and parcel of this. And I remember about 6 months ago, Flynn came on my show and talked about it. He got really upset. He learned that the White House elements of it, without Trump knowing, he confirmed that, we're creating basically a opposition research on him and a criminal investigation of him, and had people targeting his family, people doing whisper campaigns, you name it, because they were worried about him down the road if Trump went sideways, being critical, something he hasn't even done. So we know this is happening. It's so un-American. It's so dangerous. But more and more, you have the top Democrats with the top establishment Republicans circling the wagons against the American people. There was also a big article in The Atlantic by one of the top neocons saying, yes, we're all for Iran regime change. This has been handled wrong. Iran's won the war. This is really going to hurt the U.S. They're going to keep the strait closed indefinitely and take control of it. And America basically is about to collapse.
So part of the problem that you run into with the Iran war is that both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party leadership support war with Iran, right? So that's the part of the problem that you run into. And so many of us everyday Americans don't. We don't support war. And they didn't see this coming. They didn't see Tucker Carlson making this turn. They didn't see, Megyn Kelly's turned in some ways. They didn't see this coming, and they weren't prepared for this. And so remember, Tucker Carlson is already under investigation. Remember, he mentioned this before. And so now, so for Sebastian Gorka to throw his name out there like that, it's almost, sometimes these things are done to put fear into people, to make them afraid, to make them scared. Sometimes that's why they do it. So maybe try to put some fear into Tucker Carlson. Now, I'm pretty sure Tucker Carlson's probably lawyered up. But sometimes that's why they do these things. But I'm just here to tell you guys, if they go after him, they damn sure can come after any of us. They're going after someone up there on the top. And by the way, something else I noticed too, Tucker Carlson's audience has evolved. If you look at, go to Tucker Carlson's video, any of his recent videos, look at the comments. It's not just conservatives watching him. Tucker Carlson has increased support with Muslim viewers now. Things are changing. Things are changing. And I really do think that not just Trump, obviously, but I think the establishment, I think they hate that. They hate it because they look at Tucker Carlson. They're like, you're one of us. You're supposed to be one of us. You're supposed to be over here with the good old boys. And I don't think they saw this coming. I know I sure as hell didn't. I should take this picture of Alex Jones down. I'm sorry. But you guys get the point. What Alex Jones was saying is he was warning people that this was coming, that we were heading in this direction. Now, I just want to remind everybody again before we go to the next clip. Okay. Remember, under the Trump administration, 2016, there was some censorship to those on the left. Under the Biden administration in 2020, there was censorship to those on the right. And now we're back under a Trump administration again. And then they say, okay, we have this counterterrorism strategy. We're coming after the left. But the first people they name are people who are not on the left. But Sebastian Gorka is saying that they're not conservative because they are not supporting Israel. And it's not just the Israel thing with Tucker Carlson. Tucker has also been calling out Donald Trump's economy. Dun, dun, dun. Donald Trump's economy, the cost of living. He's calling out healthcare. It's not just the Israel issue. That's probably the one that's been the most prominent. But here he is going toe to toe here with the data center issue. He's calling this out too. And he called out Kevin O'Leary to his face. So see, it's not just the Israel issue. They feel that Tucker Carlson has gone too far. They said, Tucker, you need to get back over here and come to the country club with us and smoke a little doobie with the boys. Come back and go to the golf course and tee off. What is going on? So this is what he said recently about the data center, and I'll take you what he said to Kevin O'Leary.
Consider that today, the 55,000 permanent residents of Lake Tahoe, which is one of the biggest and prettiest lakes in the United States, shares borders with both California and Nevada. Residents were told today that actually we're not going to provide you electricity anymore. The Nevada-based power company that is providing electricity to the residents of Lake Tahoe informed them today that, sorry, all the electricity we make, every watt of power that we generate is going to have to go to a nearby data center. And therefore, you have until the end of next year to find a new source of electricity. And after that, we can't help you because the machines have called and they need the power. Sorry. So it's a little dystopian. to be honest. Not attacking the idea of AI and the promise that it may do useful things. But if they're informing you a year and a half out that, hey, at the end of 2027, you're not going to have any more electricity because the machines need it, and in fact, they're demanding it, and they seem a little agitated, it suggests a future that, I don't know, we should think about before it arrives.
Okay. That was the opening, I guess, before he actually spoke to this asshole, which is Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary, this is the guy that just announced he's building the largest data center in the United States in Utah, going to take up all that land. There were people protesting about this, and they said, no, you're not going to do this to us. You guys got to know those data centers draw a lot of energy, and it also uses a lot of water, right? So we're a Captain Planet moment here. Earth, wind, fire, water, go planet. And that means that the residents in those neighborhoods in that area, that means there's going to be less water for them. And we've already shown you people in Georgia that have been complaining about this. So listen to what Tucker Carlson says to Kevin O'Leary here. And again, Kevin O'Leary he's always been an asshole. I'm sorry. And I thought he was an asshole on Shark Tank. He's just a fucking jerk. But Tucker Carlson does push back on him here.
Stop advancement of technology with the uncertainty it brings has always been a dilemma in capitalism and in America. And it's a fair comment.
But how is this capitalism? If taxpayers are paying for some of it, how is that capitalism? That seems...
I think that's no different than building an apartment building downtown in Austin. You can get incentives for that too. And that's just part of how it works. You can debate
How is that capitalism? How is that free market? If politicians are handing you other people's money to do it, how is that capitalism?
Well, capitalism is built into the Constitution, which I think was genius because it couldn't have even thought that far ahead, was the idea of competition between states. Why is there an exodus out of New York City to Miami, where I live? Why are people leaving New Jersey and Massachusetts and moving into my building? Nobody in my building is from Florida. They're all from other states.
I understand.
And all of these people moving, why? Because they're reaching retirement age, and the environment in these other states is not conducive to their lifestyle when they're being
But I think you're making my point for me. You just listed states that use a higher percentage of taxpayer dollars for private industry, and people are leaving those states, Illinois.
Yeah, this is Kevin. Oh my God, Kevin O'Leary. That guy's a complete jerk. I don't know if you guys have seen the interview, but he's such a jerk. But yeah, taxpayers are paying for it. And we should have a say over those types of things. That being said, I wanted you to see this because I wanted you to realize it's not just the Israel issue, that he's been calling out Trump's failure on the economy, obviously calling out Trump going after the Pope. He's calling out the data centers, the rise of AI. So he's not just talking about the Israel issue. He's also talking about things that affect people at the kitchen table issues, your wallet, your pocket. I was at the gas station yesterday. I did not get gas though. Didn't get gas, but I was at the gas station yesterday. And I walked in there, I got a water bottle and I think those little tortilla things, which I can't even remember, the little mi niña, like pico de gallo tortillas. Anyway, I did not get gas. Gas, $4.65. I mean, economy is number one issue for people, for voters. It's the economy. Now, I think that Tucker Carlson, may feel more comfortable with someone like a JD Vance or something like that. But if I ever had a conversation with Tucker Carlson, I would explain to him, my conversation would go like this. I think we've been going about this the wrong way. I think we're going about it the wrong way by focusing on this political party, that political party, when at the end of the day, and Bernie kind of had part of this message, which is that it's top bottom. It's the people at the top versus the people at the bottom. And I feel like his 2016 campaign really harped on a lot of that, where he was like, it's the billionaires, right? And then come 2020, I think there was still that class perspective, but I do think there was more of that Trump bad and got to get Trump out and which was true, but I feel like the class part of it wasn't as strong as it was in 2016 when it was all about top bottom. And that's because, that was before we had Trump as a president. But I think that's what it has to get back to. That's really what you got to get back to. It is top bottom. And at the end of the day, all these people will swallow us up. I mean, it's just like Kevin O'Leary, like this guy doesn't care, he doesn't care that he could be putting people out. He doesn't care that taxpayers will be paying for this. All he sees is money in his pocket and money in his bank account. And that's all he cares about. And that's not community. That is selfishness. That's individualism. And this is the big question, again, that we need to ask ourselves. How long are we going to play this game of left versus right? And when are we going to get to a point where we just look at things as top bottom? Now, I say that and people will come to me and they say, but Sabs, what about all the social issues and and all these types of things and stuff? You can still organize for those issues. I'm not here to tell you no, you can't organize for those issues. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when we're looking at a political landscape, at the end of the day, if we don't understand that it's top versus bottom, no matter what type of wins that we get for those said social issues, you're still going to be at the bottom. I feel like that's the part people don't pull in, is that you're still going to end up right back here. A good example of that is the civil rights movement, right? So the civil rights movement, great movement. They didn't get to accomplish everything that they wanted to accomplish, but great movement. People sacrificed a lot for it. There were people who lost their lives, fighting for the civil rights movement, right? Okay. So that movement happened. But then if you look at the data, why are Black people still at the bottom? You see what I'm saying? So until you start to look at things, until we start to look at it as top bottom, the situation, some things will improve, but there's still going to be a bottom, bruh. We're still going to be at the bottom. And honestly, when you look back on some things, and you'll have to look this up for your areas and stuff like that as well. But when you look back on some things, and I look back and I see that, especially for the Black community, that we were doing better. We were doing better economically back in the day. Social issues was a mess, but economically we were doing better. So these are things that people really need to look at. And again, like I said, I'm not one to tell you, do not fight for social issues. I protest, I organize too. But all I'm saying is, as long as the people at the top are the ones that are, basically in control, when you get those wins, they can easily we'll just throw in another wrench to keep you where you are. Something to think about. Something to think about. Nene said, before we had all of this so-called exactly, Nene. Exactly. I don't know. I might have to see if I can find a guest to come onto the show to talk about that, to talk about how, economically, how financially we were doing better than today, financially, especially with inflation. So I don't know. I need to, if you guys know of someone I can bring on to talk about that, email me, let me know. We got to go back. We got to go way back. But yeah, that's the thing, guys. And so what they do to one, they will do to others. What they do to that whole counterterrorism strategy, they can do that to him. They can do it to anybody. I told you, they'll do it to Code Pink. They'll probably come after Code Pink, PSL. If they're going to go after them, they can still go after Tucker Carlson too. because he was not rah Israel and said, why are we giving money for this? And he also said, he was like, why are people asking me if Israel has a right to exist? He said, what does that even mean? Don't forget that part. So those are just things to think about. Something to think about. All right. Let's go to the super chats, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make sure I read the rest of these. Thank you, Constance. Bernie was my last hero. Massie will survive this. I think we need to look at ourselves as heroes, you know? Thank you, Karina. As always, the horror of sexual violence is used as a political football. So shameful. They did this to Shahid Buttar too. Like, I remember a lot of this stuff. Thank you, FW. She sounds like the Casio family still trying to false accuse MJ. These people are demons. There you go. Thank you, Jong. Nixon publicly affirmed support for enemies of Israel, i.e. Egypt. Then he got caught in Watergate, forced out. Ooh, that would be a good one to look into. Thank you, Roger. Go back to England. Are you talking about, I think he's from Hungary, or you're talking about Sebastian? Thank you, Marlon. I can see how a war criminal wouldn't want to be called a war criminal if he could outlaw calling him a war criminal by attacking free speech for ops. Ooh, that's a good one. Thank you, Fire. You're doing just fine, Sabrina. It's good everyone sees how much goes into doing your work. Zero apologies needed. Thank you for all you do. Oh, thank you, Fire. Thank you for the super chat. Focus. Thank you, Sabby, for your hard work. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Tia. I did forget Heart. I forgot Heart for Captain Planet. Thank you, Roger. Preamble. Promote the gin welfare, not capitalism. And thank you, Salt and Pepper. This man O'Leary is Canadian. Why doesn't he build it there? There you go. I don't think the Canadians want him there either, though. I don't think they want him there. They'll probably say, oh, Canada, hey. If you've never been to Canada, you guys, it's true. Canadians are very friendly and cheery and happy. It's just the first time I ever went, I was just like, does everybody like hold the door open for you? Like that was new to me. I was like, why is everyone opening the door? Like everyone was so sweet. But yeah. So that is it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be live again Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Lee Camp will be joining me on Sunday. So he has some things that he wants to talk about. And I will see you guys then. So Eric is traveling. So I know you guys probably miss him in the chat. But, you know, he's spending some time with his family as well. So that's it for me tonight, ladies and gentlemen. You know how we do this. Have a good night and keep up the fight.